quick note about the episode before we start. The interviewer you will be hearing is an AI generated voice. The questions and topics were generated by an artificial intelligence, and those questions and topics were input into another AI voice generator that created the interview voice you will be listening to.
Welcome to Drawn to Scale, the podcast where we dive into the world of landscape architecture, business, and the impact of design on our cities. I'm your host. Well, technically, I'm an AI, but today I get to do something pretty exciting. Interview a real expert in the field, Pablo from Sitio Landscape Architecture. Pablo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with your journey. You've built Sitio Landscape Architecture from the ground up. What inspired you to take the leap and start your own firm?
Yeah, well, it was a combination of a couple of things. I think the first one would be just getting my license. As soon as I got licensed, the intent was to kind of see what the opportunities were and what was available once I did get licensed, and it was pretty surprising how much did open up. And then, throughout my career and even going back to school, I had discussions with friends of mine who, we were always had conversations about opening up our own firm and being able to work together again. So that kind of stuck with me through the time that I was taking the tests and getting my license. And then just, once that did happen, I just turned around and said, well, what is it going to take and what's feasible for me to start on my own rather than continue on this path to work for other people and, helping out their firms. What does it look like if I just try to, develop something on my own?
That really resonates with me. Well, if I had personal experience, that is. But as a landscape architect, I can imagine the challenge of balancing creativity, client needs, and the business side of things. What's been the biggest learning curve for you as both a designer and business owner?
Definitely the business side of everything. I never took a class in business. There wasn't any kind of even thought of taking anything that would get me to this point, right? But that was the biggest learning curve, is learning, first of all, what does it take to even start the business? What is that? How is it structured, right? How do we handle our taxes and payroll and all that? What are the steps to get to having an actual business set up where we're able to start marketing and doing the work, right? None of that was something that I ever considered early on in my career, and that was really the biggest learning curve for me, is just getting to know all the different aspects of operating a business. I think luckily, since the firm itself is just myself, that it makes it a lot easier to kind of wrap my head around things, how they can look moving forward when we do start to hire people on.
I hear that. It's a real shift when you go from just doing the work to also running a business, handling payroll, business development, and project management, all while making sure the creative vision doesn't get lost. Have you found any strategies or habits that help you juggle it all?
Yeah, I think one of the strategies, or one of the things that I do on a pretty consistent basis, is I follow a lot of content creators that are they're entrepreneurs, they're creative people, but they also have that, they're operating their own business, and they give a lot of insight into how they operate and how they're doing things on the business side, while also displaying and showing the creative side of what the work they're actually producing, and how it gets done, either by themselves or within a team. It's helped a lot. It's not the most how can I say this? It's not like I'm reading a book. I'm just absorbing this content by viewing it on YouTube or through Instagram, through all the social media platforms. but it honestly has helped a lot to see how other people are operating their business, their creative businesses. And even on the non-creative side, right, I follow a couple of tax advice people, people that work in payroll, CPAs, and just listening to some of their content and how I can take bits and pieces from each one and apply it to what I'm doing, or simply just reaffirm that what I'm doing is the correct way, or maybe there is a better way to do certain things that I've been doing. Um, yeah, I think that's been my go-to is the biggest sort of um, place that I go to for that type of information and to increase my knowledge is going to be following those content creators.
That's a solid approach. It reminds me of something I've learned analyzing successful firms. The ones that thrive tend to have a strong mix of structured systems and creative flexibility. But let's talk about the bigger picture. Your work spans both public and private projects. How do you navigate the differences between the two?
Yeah, there's a it's really a matter of knowing who our client is, right, and knowing what their needs are. To use an industry term, who the shareholders of the particular project are, right? There's a big difference from what a private developer is looking to do on, say, a subdivision development, as opposed to a small community of people that are looking to improve or create a brand new public space that they can enjoy. Knowing that difference and knowing how to approach each one of those shareholders, that's kind of where the drive is on my end. And that dictates where the design process is going to go, right? Again, very different needs and wants from a developer and a community of people. When you start to talk to them and realize what those needs and wants are, that does kind of give you the best direction for each one of those projects. And just listening to what they have to say and what they are hoping to realize from their project and from the space that they're looking to create. And, in the end, it really is sort of our guideline, design wise.
That's really interesting, especially in the public sector where community engagement and permitting play such a huge role. Speaking of that, permitting can be a real headache for a lot of firms. Since you position Sitio as an expert in that area, what advice do you have for other landscape architects trying to streamline the process?
I'm a big proponent of just using the tools that you have to streamline your process, right? And in this case, I'm going to go back to you, the AI, and say one of the biggest. I'll share one of the biggest tools that I've implemented into the company process, the design process, not necessarily design, but the let's say the permitting process from the beginning, right? I use AI to compare, review, look for items that we would be that we specifically need to cover in some municipality codes, right? It's very easy to take a municipal code, throw it into an AI system, and ask questions rather than having to go through item by item yourself. You can create a list of items that are necessary for you to follow during that design process, right? What are the items that need to be in the design? How does that design need to be approached? And then following through is what are the items necessary for permitting? All that stuff can be easily listed out for you using some of these AI tools, which I use on a regular basis. It helps. Not only does it help save time, but a lot of times there's less human error where someone might miss something while they're reading tons and tons of text off of a screen, as opposed to a neatly prepared list of items that it took an AI 3 seconds to develop.
That makes a lot of sense. It's one of those things where experience really pays off. Knowing the process and who to talk to can save months of back and forth. On the design side, how do you balance the push for innovation with the practical constraints of budget and regulations?
Yeah, that's always an ongoing battle with some of these projects, right? Especially on the development side, the private development side, where developers are looking to maximize the profitability of a project. Yeah, it's it really is a matter of finding the right people to work with, right? The people that are looking for that innovation on the landscape side of things. There's a few of our clients have come to us and say, "Hey, look, we need to do something a little different here, uh, compared to the development down the way, right? The competitor. They need something that's going to help them stand out from their competitors. That's where we see a lot of their uh, um, they apply a little bit more budget on the landscape side of things when they want to see their project be distinct, and that tends to help us to realize a little bit more, get more a little bit innovative when it comes to the design for their project. Um, on the public work side of things, that all those budgets are very much in place, and they're relatively fixed by the time we're working on a project. Um, some municipalities do look for projects that have innovative solutions to some of their problems on sites. Um, I think especially when it comes to water quality treatments, if we can get in early on a project, like we do with most public works projects, that's kind of where we are able to say, hey, these are the solutions that we have, as opposed to something that would be pretty standard and pretty basic from coming from a, for lack of a better word, non-landscape architecture point of view. I think that's always nice to see, because then they can see what the benefits of having the conversation with a landscape architect early on can bring to the project, and where we can be a little bit more innovative than what they've seen in the past or have done in the past, right?
That's such an important point. I think a lot of emerging designers struggle with that, wanting to push boundaries but needing to stay within real world constraints. Have you come across any recent projects or trends that excite you in terms of where the field is headed?
I'm a big fan of projects where take a holistic approach to the development of whatever it may be, right? Whether it's a single family home or a commercial space, some kind of school or public space, right? Where there is uh, um, a purposely holistic approach that includes the entirety of the design team and the consultants um, early on to create this, like I mentioned, holistic design that incorporates all the elements of sustainability, water reclamation, all these things that create a self-sustained mini ecosystem that also benefits the wider community, right? Their neighbors and the adjoining properties. Those are the projects that I'm more attracted to, just because, again, it's very at least for me, it's nice to be able to work with the design team, the owners, the developers, and have this approach with everybody on the same page. We know what we want to get to, and then the exciting part is that process of getting to that point through the design phase.
That's a great insight. It's exciting to think about where landscape architecture is headed, especially with new technology, sustainability efforts, and changing urban needs. Pablo, this has been an awesome conversation. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners learn more about Sitio landscape architecture and the work you're doing?
Yeah, the best place is going to be our website, ctola.com. That has all our social media links, including our YouTube channel and Instagram accounts. You can find me personally at Pablo_Cortez on my Instagram account, where I'm pretty active. Same for our LinkedIn accounts.